Welcome to East by West Farms, where we grow what we eat and we eat what we grow. Today I'm going to talk about gardening tools. So I have a pot of sweet potatoes that are in urgent need to transplant into the garden. The weather is changing from spring to summer, it's getting hot and dry, and these sweet potatoes really need to get out in the garden, otherwise they're not going to make it in this little pot here. I do have a few tools that we collected over the last few years. There's some very conventional tools. There are some somewhat more unusual tools that are more for Eastern agriculture or horticulture. And I just had a trip to Japan where I bought two brand new tools on a home improvement store. So I'm going to sharpen up the tools, talk about the different ways of using the tools, and transplant the sweet potatoes into our garden. The first tool is the good old garden trowel. We have a lot of trowels. I can only find one. They are usually we lose them pretty quickly. The handles fall off after a while. This plastic handle is really just not all that sturdy. Sometimes I replace the handle with a wooden handle. Once in a while it's good to sharpen them. Now you want to go through the soil and cut through the soil, so it's nice to have a sharp edge. After a while of using, the edge rounds over and it becomes more difficult to cut through the soil. So I usually just take an old file and sharpen the edge of the trowel, and that here is an aluminum trowel. Aluminum is relatively soft, so they round over pretty quickly. So that's kind of the standard tool that we're using a lot. In any case, that's what you get at the home improvement store in the US. The next tool is a hand hoe. Haing bought that on Amazon. You can use this as a very universal tool to do rows, to dig holes when you use the edge to cut into the ground. It's forged out of a piece of metal with a wooden handle. The handle goes all the way through the grip. The way how to maintain the tool is to sharpen the edge. It's a little bit awkward to hold. I guess that's the best way of holding it. The top side, I'm going to use a file to get it flat, to get a flat edge, and the other side I'll do a bevel on it. Now this tool baffles me a bit because it feels like this side here is hardened and that side is not hardened. So when I use my file, it kind of skips off that side of the tool. I do have a little diamond sharpener, and that's what I need to use to actually get the edge sharpened here. The next tool is a homi. That is a very characteristic Korean tool. It is forged from one piece of metal. The metal is bent here and shaped into a triangular shape. We've got the same handle as the previous tool, where the ferrule goes all the way through the wooden handle. The tool has one wide edge that is not sharpened, then it comes to a point, and the other side has a edge that is used to cut through the ground. So a typical application is twofold. One is to dig into the soil and loosen the soil. The other side is used to scrape away weeds and flatten out the soil. The only edge that needs to be sharpened is that side of the triangle. The same thing as before, I use a file to get a flat end on one side of the tool. And the more I look at this tool, the more amazed I am how much technology goes into that tool that looks really simple on first sight. So for example, this cutting edge here is thin all the way up to here, and then it becomes thick. Another nice feature on this tool is that it's concave on the back, so it makes it really easy to sharpen the edge by just running the file flat on top of it, so you don't need to take a lot of material off that's in the middle of the blade. A tool that looks really simple, but there's a lot of technology going into making this tool. The next tool is a hori-hori. That is a Japanese tool. It is like a big knife with one serrated edge and one straight edge, and it's used to dig into the ground and make a hole to put in bulbs and things like that. It has two edges that are supposed to be sharp. This tool is made of stainless steel, so it doesn't rust, but the edge, of course, is not quite as sharp as if it was high carbon steel. To sharpen this, I use my file and make sure that the edge here is sharp and straight. Since this is concave on the inside, it's a bit hard to sharpen this with a file, so I just take the outer edge and try to get rid of any dings and nicks that might be in this edge here. The next thing is I'm using my diamond stones to refine the edge. Diamond stones used to be very expensive. That's a cheap diamond stone from Harbor Freight that's doing just fine for this kind of purpose. So I'm just using the 200 grit here. Don't need a super fine edge like with woodworking tools. Yes, and that is as much as I'm gonna do. Now it's very interesting to see the difference in quality between the tool you get at the Home Depot and that sophisticated tool that is actually pretty dangerous and wicked sharp now. The next tool is a hand sickle. That is used to cutting grass and weeds, so it's not supposed to be used in to dig into the soil. Yeah, it takes the file okay, so it is not super hard. So the top of the blade is a flat edge. There are some big chips that are chipped out of the cutting edge. So to fully restore that would take me quite a bit of time, so I'm not going to do that today. Let me do the other side. So when you look at this tool carefully, there's a edge, a machined edge, then there's a groove, and then there's a ridge on the other side. So the way to sharpen it is to keep the file flat and work along the machined edge. And that's going to take quite a bit of work to get that edge back restored and sharp. Okay, let me move over to the diamond stone. The diamond is nice because it takes a lot of material away pretty quickly. This is a 200 grit, so a pretty rough grit. And I'm going to feel the edge and then go up and down. So you can see how the diamond rides on the front edge and on the back and sets the angle correctly. So I'm going through the next final grit. That's a 300 grit. And then I go to the 600 grit. That's the finest diamond I have. You can probably hear that the sound is very different on the fine diamond. That's to polish the blade. And yes, that is a nice sharp edge. So I have two very special tools that I just bought last week. I had the opportunity to go on a trip to Japan and met up with my friend Hitoshi Morimoto, so big shout out to Hitoshi. We went to the local hardware store and bought a bunch of tools. I've got two tools here that I bought that I haven't seen in the US. It is similar to the Korean homi tool, but the shape is slightly different. It's still triangular, but it has an edge on both sides of the tool. And it is not forged from one single piece, but it's welded to a stick. I've got a riveted handle on the tool. The handle is nice. It has these two grooves, so you know where you hold it every time. So you need to look at the handle and make sure you have it at the right hand. The blade is nicely done. It's angled, slightly angled, so it's easy to pull. The sides are machined with a wheel, and then there's a secondary bevel. So let me sharpen up the secondary bevel and make it usable for gardening. You could actually use it without modifying it. It comes out reasonably sharp right out of the box. I'm using my diamond stones and just sharpening up that bevel. And the other side is kind of a little bit awkward to hold. Oh yeah, that's getting pretty sharp already. It's very nicely finished out of the box. So maybe I'll just use my diamond sharpener on this side. Yeah, that will work. The last tool I bought at the Japanese home improvement store is a one-handed Mattock, I think it's called, one-handed home Mattock. It is a really nice tool that comes with a wooden handle, has a sharp pick on the front and a broad edge on the other side. It's certainly not the highest quality. The welds are a little bit shoddy. There is a little piece of sheet metal that keeps the head from slipping off when you pull it. Nice long handle. The tool shows up here as made in China. Certainly a step up from what you see in the US home improvement stores. I think I paid a total of $6 for that tool. There is a primary bevel ground onto the side and then a secondary bevel. It's a little bit hard to find the primary bevel. Okay, here we go. Do that. And then the secondary bevel, it's hard to feel. Here we go. And then I get the flat other side. I found a nice spot here for the sweet potatoes. That's some mulch that comes from previous vegetation, some seeds that were leaving on the bed to self-seed next year. I have some Bermuda grass growing here that is highly invasive. We don't want that. Now let me clear up a patch with my new tools and see how they work. So the Mattock is really nice to get through the weeds, pull the weeds out. Let me see, how do I get this out? Let me use my homi tool. Loosen up the soil. And I've got the root ball out. One thing I need to be careful with the sharp tools is that I don't leave them pointing up into the air so somebody steps in it. So sharp tools always with the sharp edge down in the bottom. I've got the root ball separated from the pot. Now let me take one of the slips. I need to get some form of knife to cut through that. I probably can use the hori-hori to do that. Oh, beautiful. First sweet potato slip. And I use the hori-hori to put it in the ground. Just like that. First sweet potato is planted. There we go. Second sweet potato. Sweet potato spreads a lot, so I need to leave enough space between the sweet potato patches. I just went down to the garden pond to get some water. I just published a video on all the ponds that I have in the garden area. I'm doing the method that my mother taught me. We basically grew up on our own vegetables, never bought vegetables when I grew up. The important thing when planting transplants is that the root get good contact with the soil. The shower head on the watering can is not very good for that. What you want to do is you want to, I almost said compact the soil around the roots. You want to make sure that the soil liquefies and has good root contact. So I take the shower head off from the watering can and water the plants in. Oh, here's another spot that's perfect for sweet potatoes. I'm just using the hori-hori and this Japanese tool. Sweet potato goes right here. I've got a few tomato plants here. I don't know what else is growing. There is cheese sauce behind me. There is a peanut. Okay, so this goes in here. The nice thing about sweet potatoes is that you can just put cuttings in the ground and they grow really well from cuttings. So the clay starts bunching up and break into these big chunks already. So that's a sign that it starts drying out. So a little bit of rain would be really nice. In this video, I showed you a few of the tools that we're using in the garden. That includes conventional tool like this trowel, but also some tools that are less common in the Western world, like this forged homi tool, a Japanese hori-hori, a trowel that's hardened on one side and forged out of one piece. Showed you a Japanese sickle that you should never use to dig in the soil. And I showed you two tools that I just bought on a trip to Japan in the Japanese Home Improvement Center. I also showed you how to sharpen the tools so that they are easy to use and you don't get injured when you use the tools. I use the tools to plant sweet potatoes. I know that the sweet potatoes will not set tubers anymore, it's too late for that. We're not extremely interested in tubers, we eat the leaves. If you want to know how to cook sweet potato leaves, we have a few videos on how to do this on our channel, so check it out if you get a chance. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the description below. And hit the subscribe button so you get a notification every time we post a new video.